I'm Kristen Creighton, and I just wanted to share with you a little bit about how God helps to refocus me when I get a little out of whack. A couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to play a game of hide and seek with my preschool-aged grandson. For those of you that have never experienced hide and seek with a preschooler, it goes something like this. They hide in a very obvious place, like under a blanket or behind a curtain, while you pretend to look for them, saying, "Oh, are they here? No, not here. Are they over there? No, not there." And this goes on while they giggle until finally they relent and say, "I'm over here." And you go and find them, much to their delight. Sadly, I figured out recently that my relationship with God is kind of like a game of hide and seek with a preschooler, only in this situation, I'm the preschooler hidden away in a very obvious place, while I'm pretending that God doesn't see me. In truth, I know He knows I'm there. He's just sitting patiently waiting for me to say, "Here I am," so He can scoop me up and delight in my return. So the question I have to ask myself is, why do I keep hiding? Well, if I'm honest, I have to admit I'm hiding from intimacy itself. Because I know that when God looks at me, He sees me. Really sees me. Not that cool, calm, collected, got it all together version of myself that I like to show the rest of you. No, when He looks at me, He sees it all. He sees my insecurities, how desperate I am at times to be liked, respected, needed, and how sometimes I spend way too much time trying to figure out how to say or do or be the right thing just so I can get everyone's approval. And He also knows my MO, that when I can't figure it out, I tend to withdraw, hide behind a veil of busyness or a smokescreen of performance, or just, plain old-fashioned avoidance. And when I hide from Him, though, I can pretend everything's just fine. At least I can try. The crazy thing is that I have to acknowledge that the very thing I'm needing most, intimacy, approval, value, those are found only in the one that I'm trying to hide myself from. And it's so ridiculous to admit to myself that I am hiding from love itself. Psalm 139, the Message version, says something like, "Is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit? To be out of your sight? If I climb to the skies, you're there. If I go underground, you're there. If I fly out on morning's wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in a minute because," get this, "you're already there waiting." So, when I finally realize how pointless hiding is, inevitably, God helps me to refocus my attention. And that's exactly what He's been doing with me these past few weeks, refocusing me on what matters most. He's called to me more times than I can count, just gently, softly reminding me of His presence and trying to coax me out from under my rock and into His arms. And slowly I refocus and I begin to head in a new direction. And so hiding from God turns to hiding in Him. So what does that mean? What does it mean to hide in Him? When I read Psalm 91, the first part of it says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." I have to be honest with you, that little phrase, abide in the shadow of the Almighty, it kept me up at night. I kept asking God, what does that mean to abide in your shadow? The word abide, when I looked it up, it means to accept or act in accordance to. So I accept His shadow. When I think about that, when I prayed about that, two things really came to mind for me. The first is that I have to really intentionally position myself in the shadow by dwelling in Him. And if you've ever played that shadow game when you were a kid, where you tried to stay in somebody else's shadow, you realize how focused you have to be on following their every single move, right? So I have to be laser focused on Jesus so I can walk in step with Him to remain in that shadow. The second thing I realize is if I'm in His shadow, that means that He is standing in between me and whatever spotlight that I'm thinking the world is putting on me. So when the world looks at me, they're actually seeing me through Him. And that gives me absolute freedom from fear. You know that nightmare people have where they're public speaking and they have this image of themselves standing naked in front of a crowd? I think that's actually what God wants from me. I mean, not literally, but in Psalm 139, when the psalmist finally recognizes that he can't hide from God anywhere, he has this perspective shift. He refocuses his energy, and instead of hiding, he says to God, hey, search me, know me, see me, because he knows that in exposing himself completely to God, then he can truly be healed and filled with everything that he needs. So what that means for me is this assurance that when I stand naked, vulnerable, in his shadow, I have the assurance that others see me as clothed in his righteousness. There's nothing more beautiful. So when I refocus my energy and trying to hide from him and turn that into hiding in him, I find I can rest. I'm safe and I'm secure as I'm wrapped up in his loving arms. Nothing else matters. And then, only then, do I really have the courage to embrace intimacy with others and allow them to see me, like really see me as well. I'm really thankful God's patient, that he's willing to wait on me as long as it takes until I finally peek my head out from under that blanket and I'm like, here I am. And then he looks me deep in the eyes and he says, here I am. Come to me. I wish I could say this is like a one-time thing for me, this game of hide and seek that I do, but sadly this is part of my own dance of intimacy with God. I'm grateful that I serve a God who will time and again refocus my attention on what really matters, and that's intimacy with him. When it comes down to it, I guess I'm just a little girl walking in her daddy's shadow. I like to think that's a pretty precious picture.